Wrestling. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's an act performed by people in which they use their strength to try to pin another person down to the ground. It may sound violent, and it can be violent, but it can also be playful and relatively safe. For example, some kids and teenagers like to wrestle for fun with their friends. In elementary school, I saw kids wrestle all the time. It's also done as a sport in schools, in the Olympics, and even as a professional sport. Personally, I've never wrestled before. As you can probably tell, I'm not very athletic and I'm not a fan of sports. But even if I were athletic, I would never want to wrestle because it's a little too intimate for me. In my opinion, the idea of two men in tights grabbing and squeezing each other doesn't sound like fun. So I have never wrestled in that way, and I don't know if you have ever wrestled in any of those ways, but the fact of the matter is we all wrestle in some way. That's because wrestling can also be one of the spirit or of the mind. We wrestle against others in disputes. We wrestle with our own conscience, and we wrestle with life. For those of you familiar with the Bible, you can probably tell where I'm going with this. In the Bible, there's a person whose whole life can be characterized by wrestling. He may very well have wrestled from before the day he was born, all the way to the day he died. And that man's name is none other than Jacob. Now, there's a lot we can learn from his life, but we obviously don't have that kind of time to examine his life story in detail. So I'm going to focus on a very important moment of his life and share with you what we can learn from that. But before we get to the heart of the message, I want to give you some background in case you've never heard this story, or perhaps you just aren't very familiar with it. The story of Jacob. Jacob was the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham, and Abraham is the one who people consider to be the founder of the Jewish religion. That's what is written in the secular history books. Abraham had a very special relationship with God because he believed and trusted in God during a time when most people did not. Many years after the global flood that wiped out most of mankind, people put God out of their minds and began creating their own gods in the form of idols. Even Abraham's own father, Terah, was an idolater. But Abraham alone trusted in the one true God. Because of this, God blessed him in every way and promised him land for his descendants. During the days of the Old Testament, the firstborn son was really special. It's not like today where we say that the oldest is special, and all we do is just give him or her more responsibilities. No, in those days, much like the way of kings, the firstborn would receive most, if not all, of the inheritance from the father, and would take over the household when the father died or was away. It was called the double portion. But the firstborn son of Abraham would receive much more than that because God told Abraham he would bless his descendants. So Isaac, the firstborn of Abraham's wife Sarah, not only received a vast inheritance from his wealthy father, he also received the favor and promises of God. Things were not as simple for Isaac's children, however. His wife had twins, 2 boys, yet only one child would receive the abundant promises of God. Even before they were born, they wrestled within Rebekah's womb. And when they were born, Esau came out first because he was stronger, but Jacob held on to Esau's heel. Jacob had lost the fight, but he did not give up. He would continue to wrestle. And you probably know the rest of the story. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew, which led to Jacob stealing Esau's blessing as well. Jacob was constantly wrestling throughout his life, trying to get on top. He knew he couldn't win against Esau in a contest of strength because Esau was a man of the outdoors, a skillful hunter. Jacob, on the other hand, was the one who would stay in the tents or take care of the sheep. But every chance he could find, Jacob tried to get on top, just like in wrestling, and eventually he prevailed by deception. But his success in stealing the blessing made Esau hate him, so much so that Esau wanted to kill Jacob. Jacob fled from Esau and went far away to stay with his uncle, Laban. And there he wrestled with his uncle for 20 years on his own terms in a battle of deceit. When he prevailed against his uncle, God told him to go back to his homeland. In doing so, God was sending Jacob to meet Esau, of whom he was still very afraid. To put it simply, God was sending Jacob into hot water. He was sending Jacob to his worst fear. Jacob, whom God loved, was not exempt from trouble, and neither are we. Just like how God sent Jacob to Esau, God sometimes sends us directly into trouble to test our faith, to strengthen our spirits, and to deepen our relationship with Him. How does Jacob react? How does God respond? Let's take a look and see how we can deal with the greatest troubles that come our way in life. 1. Pray first, ask questions later. Genesis 32, 9-12. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good, I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. At this point, Jacob hears that Esau is coming and is bringing along 400 men. It looks like he's bringing an army, so Jacob instantly thinks that Esau is coming to attack them. So what does Jacob do? The second thing Jacob did is the most obvious thing we should do in our struggles. He prayed earnestly to God. Prayer is one of the most important things we can do in our walk with God, yet it is something we so easily forget to do. In fact, it is so easily forgotten that even Jacob forgot to do it first as well. You may be wondering, the second thing, what happened to the first thing? Why did we skip over the first thing that Jacob did? That's because his first reaction was to panic. He was greatly afraid and distressed. And that's our first reaction too. As soon as a problem comes our way, we complain and wonder why this is happening to us, or we worry about the worst possible outcome, but that is not what God wants. Why do we panic? It's because our eyes are focused on our problems. But our first step should always be to focus our eyes on God, and prayer enables that. Prayer leads us toward God and connects us with Him. Never underestimate the power of prayer. God has shown us time and time again in the Bible that when things happen, there's prayer behind it. The next thing Jacob does, and is a good example for us to follow, is that he tries to do something about it. 2, just do it. Genesis 32:20. And you shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. Just do it. That's the Nike slogan. But what exactly am I trying to say with the words, just do it? I'm not saying to do anything that comes to your mind. I'm not telling you to be reckless and leap before you look. But God gave us a mind so that we can think for ourselves. He gave us a body capable of many actions, and He gives us resources that we may use them to solve problems. Many times in the Old Testament, the Israelites had enemies that harassed them. And while God had the power to simply make their enemies cower in fear and run away, God chose to use the Israelites in battle. God would give them the victory, but they would have to go into battle and fight. They did not pray, O Lord, make our enemies go away. Instead, they prayed, O Lord, give us the victory for your name's sake. In the same way, God will solve our problems, but He may include us in the solution. So unless God tells you to stop and wait and let Him handle it, we have to see what we can do and do it. Here, Esau was coming, and Jacob knew he had to do something. He looked around and realized that God had given him plenty. So Jacob came up with a plan to give what he had to Esau as a gift to appease him. 3. Get clear. Genesis 32:22-24. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. You've prayed to God. You've done what you can. Now what? All that's left is to wait for God, right? But if only it were that simple. If prayer is talking to God, then we talk a lot. We talk, but when are we listening? A conversation is between 2 people. Talking with each other is one way we build a relationship, and that's what we as Christians should be striving for, building a relationship with God. But far too often we shoot our prayers to God, and then we go about our lives waiting for His answer. But it's really hard to listen to God because something is stopping us from hearing God. Something is acting like spiritual earplugs. We are becoming spiritually deaf. From what? This. It's a device for communication, yet this little device can impede our communication with God. And I'm not saying it's this specifically that is the problem, but what it represents. The world we live in today feels like it has been designed to stop us from communicating with God. Just take a look at this phone. It's wonderful, isn't it? Nowadays, you can get unlimited calling, data, and texting for a fair price, and the battery should last you through the day. You can call anyone at any time. They're not picking up, you can text them instead. But that's not all it does. There's a huge library of apps, most of them free, just waiting for you to check them out. You can get maps for navigation or get news and weather reports. You can take pictures and send them to friends. There are music and games and movies just a flick away. The whole World Wide Web is on this thing, and we know just how addictive it can be to just Google anything and everything. It's a source of information, communication, and fun. And it's just made to be so convenient. Just plug in some headphones, and you're in your own little world of whatever floats your boat. Add that to your crazy lives full of schedules and plans and school and work, and you're stuck in a never-ending cycle of always doing something. Busy? Then you're tied to all your responsibilities. Not busy? Then you're tied to your phone. How many times have you looked at a crowd and seen people on their phones at any given moment? I'm guilty of it too. All the gadgets we have are distractions. All the personal issues we have are distractions, and people can be distractions too. Jacob realized that he had too many distractions in his life. So what did he do? He sent them all away. He sent them ahead, and he alone stayed behind. And now that all the distractions were finally gone, God appeared. When was the last time you just did nothing? When you chose to just stop everything and meditate? When was the last time you made a conscious decision to stay in silence, not to pray, but to listen? We are so distracted by the things of this world that it seems like we never have time for God. Sometimes we have to get clear of all this stuff, of this fast-paced world that constantly demands our attention, because God demands our attention too, and He is the one who should have it. 4. Wrestle with God. Genesis 32:25-28. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." When we are alone, we are not alone. We are never alone, for God is always with us. And now that Jacob had removed the distractions, God had his attention. The mysterious man in this story is considered to be God or an angel carrying out God's will by representing God. Why was God wrestling with Jacob? It's because Jacob was wrestling with God. I can only imagine what was going through Jacob's head his whole life. Questions like, why did I have to be born as a twin with a brother beside me? Why was I born weaker than my brother so that I would lose the birthright? Why do I have to leave my father's house with nothing but a staff when I now possess both the birthright and the blessing? Why was I tricked into marrying someone I don't even love? Why does my own uncle try to take everything from me? Why must I meet the brother who hates me and wanted to kill me? He was always wrestling. When you wrestle with life, you wrestle with God. When you question life, who you're really questioning is God, and that's because God is in control. If it's good, it came from God. If it's bad, it did not happen without God knowing and allowing it to happen. God was showing Jacob that he had not been wrestling with Esau. He had not been wrestling with his uncle Laban, and he was not wrestling with a problem. All that time, he had been wrestling with God. And that's a comforting thought because we know that God is doing it all for our good. And here's the interesting thing. Jacob did not surrender. God told him he had prevailed. Sometimes we say in church to surrender to God. There's a song, "We surrender all." But to surrender to God, you must never surrender God. You must never give God up. You must never let go of God, because keeping God is what He wants. When you hold fast to Him, you will find that He will love you and He will bless you. I said earlier that I did not like wrestling because it was too intimate. But for God, He wants to be intimate. He wants you to draw close. And you can't get much closer than wrestling.
rise against me, but I will hold my ground. I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always, always. Trouble surrounds me, chaos abounding, my soul will rest in you. I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always, always. I lift my eyes up, I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always.